Well, welcome back. Did you know that all parts of the Brussels sprout plant is edible and can serve as a delicious substitute for cabbage? In this next segment, a top chef uses two ingredients to enhance that very special flavor. Take a look.
We're joined by one of our favorite friends of Virginia this morning, Chef Paul Kostandin. It's great to see you, friend.
It's great seeing you too.
This is going to be a perfect recipe. Frankly, I love Brussels sprouts any time of year, but this is a perfect one for the holiday season.
Absolutely. These are a fan favorite around my table at Thanksgiving and Christmas.
Are people intimidated, Paul, by Brussels sprouts? Like, if you haven't done them before, is it kind of one of those things that you're like, oh, I don't really know what to do?
I think people are intimidated. People are also probably, hearkening back to sort of eating, underseasoned, overcooked, or boiled Brussels sprouts in their childhood. Everyone's got that opinion about Brussels sprouts until they have them prepared really well. And they're really not hard. And they're very forgiving as well.
That's a huge thing to point out, that fresh Brussels sprouts are a completely different beast than kind of the boil in the bag situation that may have been happening before. It's just an entirely different experience.
Absolutely. Flavor wise, texture wise, they're just, wholly different. And if you like Brussels sprouts at restaurants, whether they're crispy Brussels sprouts with, whatever topping the restaurant's doing, they're often coming in, fresh.
Well, take us through this exciting journey of a recipe for the holidays.
All right, then. So I'm going to get started. I've got a cast iron pan heating up. I like to use cast iron because it's nice and thick and it holds the heat and does a great roast, especially if you are cooking on electric like I am at home. I'm going to put about 1/4 of a cup of canola oil into the pan and then add about 1/2 cup of chopped onion and 3 to 4 cloves of chopped garlic. And now I'm going to add 1.5 pounds of half Brussels sprouts. These are just half. If you have bigger ones, you can cut them into quarters and that's fine. You don't want to leave them whole the yolk because they're going to take too long. And I'm just going to dump them right on top. And now I'm going to sort of let them sit for just a second so they get a nice sear. I'm going to increase the heat on this pan a little bit.
And Paul, with Brussels sprouts, because I try to make these at home too, there seems to be like a fine balance. You put quite a bit, but it looks like a large pan. A difference between getting that nice like sear and browning versus almost like a steaming. Is there anything that we should be keeping in mind there?
Yeah, you never want to overcrowd your pan, and that's sort of where the steaming comes into play. So if you see that you have like 2 distinct layers of Brussels touching the bottom of the pan and then Brussels sitting on top, you're going to get into that dangerous area where you start to steam them. If you have a lot of Brussels and you're trying to cook for a big group, I recommend roasting them in the oven and then finishing them on the stove with your sauce. It's just going to be a little more bulletproof for you. So I'm just going to stir these around a little bit, starting to get a sear. The garlic and onion is smelling delicious. And then to sort of facilitate the cooking process, I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of unsalted butter. I'm going to go light on the salt in this recipe just because the soy sauce is going to bring a ton of seasoning in.
And that reminds me there, when you started, Paul, you put in the canola oil. Like sometimes I've used olive oil, but I think that goes so quickly. Do you prefer using canola?
I tend to use canola oil or a blended olive oil and canola blend to sear and to roast with. It's going to have a higher heat to it. It's going to allow you to get a lot higher of a temperature without burning your oil. Good extra virgin olive oil has a very low, it's called smoke point. And that's the point at which the oil starts to burn. So if I want olive oil flavor, I'll add a little bit at the end to sort of season with the olive oil towards the end of the roasting process.
That makes sense. So they're coming together and they just really kind of brown and sear and do their thing.
Absolutely. And now I'm going to really turn up the heat. With cast iron, you don't want to go too high because you can get the pan very, very hot on your stove. And then we're going to add the honey. So when it's dealing with honey, you can measure it out, but I find it squirts from the bottle a lot easier and it makes less of a mess. And this is just an old-fashioned honey bear. So I'm going to put about 1/4 of a cup, maybe 1/2 cup of honey in. And I'm going to let that just sort of fall to the bottom of the pan. And that's going to start to caramelize. And you're going to toast that honey and it's going to give it a richer, sort of more round flavor. It's going to be a little less saccharine sweet and a little more savory. And then once it toasts out, you're going to see the sort of honey start to bubble up and it's going to smell absolutely wonderful. I'm going to hit it with I like to add a touch of sriracha for heat and zip, but if you're not a fan of spicy foods, go ahead and omit it. Let me open it up. Just a little bit, nothing too crazy. All right. And then to finish, I'm going to pour in my soy sauce and just let that reduce into a nice sauce and continue to roast these Brussels in the bottom of the pan. I'm not going to season these with any salt until I taste them at the end. I am going to put a little bit of black pepper in just for some great flavor.
And Paul, you threw that soy sauce in. If you, like, I know I usually keep a bottle of low sodium, and you were trying to keep the salt, content or sodium low on this one. How much soy are you using?
Absolutely. I used a quarter cup of soy sauce there, and I actually did use low sodium soy sauce for the same reason, just trying to watch, the amount of sodium in my diet. And the nice thing about the low sodium soy sauce is it brings the same sort of umami savory quality without adding all that soy of like the regular full strength soy sauce that you might find, in the grocery store shelves.
Now, if everybody was just catching on to that with the umami, let's remind everyone what that is, because we didn't miss an ingredient here, Paul.
No. So umami is, they call it the fifth sense or the fifth taste. And it is, it's sort of like overly savory things. When you think of pizza with cheese and tomato and mushrooms, that combination of ingredients has what are called free glutamates, and it builds this umami, this sense of like mouth-watering savory quality. And you get it from soy sauce, you get it from anything with glutamic acid in it, which is a fancy term. You might find that word in like MSG, the ingredient that you add to food to give it that quality. It naturally occurs in mushrooms, naturally occurs in soy sauce, naturally occurs in cheese, anything made with yeast. So that's how, when you eat a pepperoni pizza, it's got all those glutamates going and it's mouth-watering and it's just absolutely delicious. That's because you're combining all these ingredients that are high in umami.
Understood. And so that's kind of wrapping up there. You're bringing it all together.
Absolutely. And then this recipe is vegetarian, just sort of off the bat. If you wanted to go vegan, you could omit the butter. You could substitute any vegan-friendly spread, and then you can use agave syrup for the honey if you're looking to omit that as well. All great options if you're looking for a vegan option for your table.
And Paul, we're just about out of time, but two quick things. You probably want to make this right before you serve it.
Absolutely. It can sit for a little while in a pan in a warming oven, about an hour. But after that, the Brussels start to get dark and they get a little overly roasted or like overly steamed vegetable flavor. So this is one of the last dishes I'll do before Thanksgiving dinner hits the table.
I like it. And how's everything going with the blog?
Everything's going great. We're getting some great recipes on there, getting some good feedback from people. And then we're, really starting to focus this month. We've got, I think 25 more days till Thanksgiving. So we'll be focusing on, just like this, sides for your Thanksgiving table, trying to up the side dish game this year.
Well, I love it. Well, you mentioned mouth watering. My mouth is watering. Paul, thanks for spending time with us today. We appreciate it.
Always a pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Our pleasure for sure. And we'll be sure to include a direct link on WTVR.com/VTM so that you can find Paul and all of those delicious recipes.